Hello, I'm Specialist Sherwood for the 222nd Broadcast Operations Detachment. This video is going to help inform you about the basic operations of the Panasonic HPX-170 camera, which is the standard camera we use for all of our video acquisitions in this unit. We're going to walk you through from the basics of setting up power and function checking, all the way through to downloading your information onto the computer you're going to be editing it on. So let's open it up and get started. The first thing we need to do before we can continue our function check is be sure that the unit has power. At the back of the camera here is the receptacle for the battery, and there's a couple of metal contacts at the bottom. So be sure your battery is properly aligned, put it in, snap it down, make sure it's nice and secure. Now the camera is powered. The next thing we need is to put our P2 card in here, so we've got something to record onto. Just above the battery there's this little flip-up slot, and that's where your P2 cards go. It'll store up to 2 of them. Take it, press it in there, lock it in place, and close it up. Now we've got batteries and something to record onto. The next thing we're going to do in terms of hardware setup is get our audio equipment connected, whatever we're planning on using for the job. In this case, I'm going to be using a shotgun mic. Whether you're connecting a lavalier receiver or a shotgun mic, they're both going to connect to the same place on the camera, which is this right here, this base plate on the top of the camera, just behind its internal and built-in microphone. Alright, so I've got the shotgun mic seated in the base plate, and it's got this locking ring on top of it. We want to be sure that we go ahead and tighten that and secure it so that this doesn't come off mid-shoot. Whether you're using a shotgun mic or a lavalier receiver, be sure you tighten this up. The next thing we got to do is take this output from the microphone and plug it into the input on the camera. The channel inputs are right back here on the right side, just in front of the hand strap. We're going to take the cover off for channel 1, and we're going to plug this in right here on channel 1. It'll lock in place, nice and secure. Unit SOP requires that we clear our P2 cards of any leftover visual data that's on them. So let's talk about how we do that right now. Okay, now we've got all the hardware we're going to be using attached to the camera, so let's go ahead and power it up. The power button is located on the right side of the camera, directly behind the hand strap here. It's this gray button next to the red record button. Push the power button in and then down, and now that charges the camera and turns it on. We take off the lens cover now and open the viewfinder on the left side. At this point, check your eyepiece and your viewfinder to be sure that both are giving you a good image of what the camera is seeing. In the upper right corner of the viewfinder is your battery charge indicator. Make sure that it shows that you have a full charge, or at least enough to do the job you're about to do. To the left of the battery indicator is your P2 card indicator. This is a green number 1 or 2, and it shows which P2 cards the camera is seeing right now and which one it's recording to. If these numbers are not displaying, then the camera either has no card in it or the card is bad and needs to be replaced. To format the P2 card, on the back of the camera you'll press the mode button. When you press the mode button, it'll change to a green light next to the letters MCR. As you can see, this brings up the format and options control for the P2 cards. To the left of the eyepiece here is your control panel. It's got a little joystick and a menu button. This is what you use to make changes when you're in this mode. So we're going to start by pressing the menu button and then toggling down to operations, right to format, right again, and we're going to select the slot we want to format. Now our card is in slot 1, shown by this little orange light here. So we're going to go ahead and press that, confirm. And now it's going to format and delete that extra data. And we're going to hit OK. And menu. And now we can see that there is nothing on the card. It's good to go. So we're going to press the mode button one more time, and we'll see a red light come on next to the letters CAM, camera. The next thing we want to do is to check our resolution so we can be sure that we're shooting this in the proper format. When your display looks like this, press the menu button up here on the control panel again, and it'll bring up a whole bunch of text. We're going to go down to recording setup, and we're going to make sure that the recording format adheres to the unit SOP. Currently, our SOP requires that we shoot at 720p by 60p. If it doesn't show that, push left or right and then select the correct option. Press menu a couple of times to get back to this, and now you're good to go on that. Alright, now that we've finished formatting the P2 card and setting up our resolution, the last thing we have to do is configure our audio hardware. So we've plugged this in previously to input 1. So on the left side here, we see channel 1, channel 2, input 1, input 2. So we're going to go over here to channel 1, and we're going to switch it from the internal camera to input 1, and that selects this microphone. Now, a shotgun mic doesn't have its own power supply, so for it to function, the camera has to feed it power. In order to send power to one of the inputs, you go over to input 1 or 2 and turn it on. Now the shotgun mic has power, it is selected and good to go. If this were a lav receiver, it has its own batteries, so be sure that you don't turn on power from the camera to a lav receiver. Lastly, on this side, input 1, you'll see line and mic. Be sure that you select microphone. We've got everything set up here, so let's turn it off, button it up, make sure we have all the equipment we need. I still need a headset. There we go. Now we got everything. Let's go outside and do the job. All right, we're outside. It's nice and sunny. We've got beautiful weather. It's going to change how we have to shoot, so let's talk about that now. Before we can shoot anything, got to take the lens cover off. All right, so let's talk first about exposure. Light coming through the camera passes through the iris, and the control for that is this little dial right here on the left-hand side at the bottom and front of the camera. Little dial goes up and down, and what that'll do is as you're looking at your viewfinder and you point it at an object that's really bright, it'll show you black and white lines called zebra stripes, and you want to adjust this so that you only see those stripes on objects that are really naturally bright that you're looking straight at. The next thing we're going to talk about is the neutral density filter, and you can see that right above that iris control. It's a button that has 4 toggle states right there. And it's like putting sunglasses on your camera. So if you're outside and it's bright and it's hurting your eyes, imagine what it's doing to your shot. So we use this to change the amount of brightness, the amount of light that the camera is allowing to get through to your shot. For an example, let's look at this billboard back behind me and try a couple of different settings and see what that does to the image. All right, here is 1/4, 1/16, and 1/64. See how that changes the image. We're almost done with our function checks. Let's take care of what's called the auto white balance next. White balance is where you designate the color white for the camera, and then it will auto adjust all the other colors that you're taking in against that base. So usually you would want to have like a white balance card that you can hold in front of the camera. I don't have one, so I'm going to have to make do with this white curb over here. The way this works is that you're going to push the auto white balance button on the front left of the camera. It says AWB. So you aim your camera at the subject, which would be a white balance card ideally, and you zoom in and so that the white color fills the entire screen. And then you press the auto white balance button once, and once it's done, your colors have been adjusted. You want to do this anytime you change lighting situations, going indoor to outdoor especially. If you change rooms and they have different kinds of lighting, one is fluorescent and the other is lit by lamps for instance, you definitely want to change it there too. This ensures that the color of all of your shots stays consistent no matter where you are. The last thing we got to do now is check our audio levels and make sure that gear is functioning. But let's get out of the sun and over here into the shade so I can show you what I'm talking about. So we've done everything else, all that's left is our audio. First thing we need to do is plug in our headset on the back here. Pull this plastic tab down on the right hand side next to your battery, plug your headphone in. The next thing we're going to do is look at the audio levels on our viewfinder. In the lower left hand corner of your viewfinder it shows a 1 and a 2. This shows the volume for the incoming audio streams for those 2 channels. Even though it may sound good in your headset, always trust your volume indicator down here. If it shows a red marker on either of these lines, that means your audio is blowing out and is way too loud. So you need to adjust your audio level. The way you do that is down here. On the bottom of the camera's left-hand corner, near the battery, you'll see channel 1, channel 2, in between an audio marker. Moving these dials back and forth changes the level of the channel that it's associated with. As you can see, channel 1 now has 0 input, and channel 2 is still getting some. Lastly, if you're not hearing audio in your headset, but you're seeing levels in here, then this up here, a master audio control for your output, needs to be adjusted with the plus and the minus mark. Oh, also one other thing, if you're not hearing anything in your headset, make sure you've got your headset volume turned up. One last thing, if you're still not getting audio in your headset, there's a power switch on the side. Make sure it's turned on. Okay, let's talk briefly about shot composition. Right now I'm centered, and that's great for an instructional video like this, but generally you want to follow the rule of thirds, which is imagining a set of lines that divide your view space into thirds. So let's go ahead and put me in the correct position now. I think you went a little bit too far. Come on. Yeah, okay. So I'm looking this direction, so I should have a certain amount of view space. That's space opposite where I am on the screen looking the direction I'm looking. If I change where I'm looking, view space needs to change also. Finally, head space. Unless you're really in close on your subject, give them some space. You don't want your image to be chopped off in the middle of their forehead because it just doesn't look natural. Similarly, you don't want limbs chopped off, like an arm hanging off the screen or something like that. It just looks strange. So to help you get the shots you want, there's a couple other tools we can talk about, and that is focus and zoom. Let's talk about focus first. Immediately to the left of our ND filter is our focus control area. Focus has a couple of options. A for automatic, M for manual, and down here is push auto. I'll talk about that in a second. Generally, you're going to want to keep it on automatic, unless your mission or your orders require you to be on manual. If you are using manual, you'll have to use your focus ring in order to bring your subject into clarity. The very frontmost of these twisting rings up here is your focus ring. As you twist one way or the other way, your subject will become clearer and sharper, or softer and fuzzier. If for whatever reason you're in manual mode and you hit an emergency and you just cannot adjust fast enough, use the push auto button. As long as you're holding this button down and in manual mode, the camera will automatically focus for you. Let's talk about zoom next. Clearly, I didn't walk over to that big billboard. I used the zoom feature of the camera, so let's talk about that right now. Okay, to use the zoom capacity on our camera, we need to make sure everything is set up properly. If I want to do it manually, I have to adjust the settings to manual. The button is over here, to the right of the ND filter and below it. Now it's set to manual, so I can use this ring here in order to zoom in and out with my shot. If I want to use the automatic toggles, then I select servo instead of manual. That lets me use the handle zoom and also the zoom that's directly above where my hand is usually resting. If you're trying to use the handle zoom and it's not working, make sure that servo is selected, that the handle zoom is turned on, and that you have the correct speed you want. If you're doing manual zoom, understand you may have to refocus your shot when you zoom in. So now that you've got your shot composed the way you want it, you've got two options. You can press record on the handle mic, or you can press record down here by your thumb. That's it. Let's go back inside and get this stuff on the computer. All right. So to get this onto the computer, you take your P2 card out of your camera, put it into the card reader, secure it, and it'll pop up over here. But editing is a different class. So we've covered a lot today. I hope it's been helpful. This should get you everything you need to get started doing basic products out in the field.